Bernard Rice is well known for elevating the education and ethical standards within the real estate profession and creating initiatives that benefited the industry. His leadership brought about progressive change, and his tireless effort can be seen in many of the requirements and ethical standards for real estate professionals, both locally and nationally.
I think probably the growth of the Minnesota Association, which was non-existent until 1949. Dad was with the Minneapolis board from 1936, and in 1949 he then took over the Minneapolis, continued with the Minneapolis Board of Realtors, and started as the first executive of the Minnesota Association of Realtors, a big organization. But organizing boards all over the state was a challenge for him, but he enjoyed it. Little trips out to all over the state, and sometimes talking to 3 or 4 people, sometimes talking to 15. But they eventually formed 38 boards of realtors around the state, which now has been commingled into about 15. But he might say that was his, I don't know, but I think he might say that was his most significant and maybe most fun he had doing the outstate stuff.
He enjoyed working with organized real estate at the local level as well as the statewide level. He enjoyed working with the people who were in leadership positions. And so probably that working relationship that he had with so many people around the state who were engaged in real estate, he probably would be very proud of being able to do that successfully over a long period of time. By the time Bernie retired, he'd been in association work for nearly 50 years. So he had a long track record of working with people on all sorts of different projects.
The impact Bernie Rice's leadership had on the associations he managed is evident, not only in the increase in membership during his tenure, but also the positive change he brought to the real estate industry as a whole. He created a library for membership use, now called the Bernard G. Rice Library, and was instrumental in the creation of Minnesota's first multiple listing service.
He was a hands-on kind of a person. He was no nonsense, hands-on. He did give all the credit, I think, in the world, and he should have, to his staff and to the members of the associations who really volunteered their time to go out and organize things and lobby at the legislature and do all the rest of it. So, but he was a hands-on guy. He really liked to write. He was a journalism major, is why he got into real estate. They hired him to write a weekly newsletter, and he was a straight A, Phi Beta Kappa student of journalism at the U. He wanted to be a sports writer, but he couldn't afford it, so he did this. And for the next 1,600 weeks, he published weekly, and he, come hell or high water, he got that out every week. So he was I think he'd say communications are important. It's different today than it was then, but it was always important. I think Dad would be most proud of, for 42 years, being a consistent voice for the real estate industry in professionalism and ethical standards. That's what he stood for. It was 46 years. It came from 42 years, came from the Depression all the way to the depths of the Depression, all the way to the boom years of the 40s, 50s, and 60s after the war, and tremendous growth in the industry. But he was always rock solid in his understanding of what he thought it should be, and especially with ethics and standards in the business. He was, of course, also very proud, I think, of his civic accomplishments, which were really connected to the Board of Realtors when he was instrumental in shaping some of the planning policies and the assessing policies for the city of Minneapolis, and maybe most importantly, getting the real estate license law passed at the state Minnesota legislature. It took many, many years for that, so that real estate licensees they're all licensed now, and there's ethical standards, and there are continuing education, and I think he'd be very proud of that.
He was very active in getting that license law passed, and it wasn't an easy thing to do either at that time. I think that might be certainly on the top of his list.
Through hard work and dedication, Bernie Rice created change in the organization that was needed to elevate the education and regulation of real estate professionals. He helped to establish Minneapolis planning, zoning, and taxation policies with the passage of license laws regulating real estate professionals in the state of Minnesota.
Dad's character was, I think, impeccable. His work ethic was, he was kind of a no-nonsense guy relative to work. as I said, he got the job in the depth of the Depression, and that was his job. That's what he did. And he did it well, and he was relentless in doing it. And I think he was respected by his peers for that. He treated them all the same. He was fair. And there was big firms with 50 agents and small firms with 1 agent. And he always prided himself on treating everybody the same. And in his standards, he said, come hell or high water, I'm treating them all the same. And, and he did. So
he had tremendously high ethics, personal ethics, as well as demanding in the industry that members maintain the code of ethics that the realtors have in place. And he was very persistent and ongoing with that. Very proud of the fact that realtors had a high level of ethics that they subscribed to.
Bernie Rice was influential in the passage of the Minnesota Education, Research, and Recovery Fund Act. This act codified the real estate industry's desire to develop university-level real estate education.
Our family is very thankful to the University of St. Thomas and the Opus College of Business and the Shanahan School of Real Estate for making this possible. I think it's a wonderful idea, and I'm looking forward to seeing all the other people that will be involved in this over the years. Dad, I think he'd say, you know, I don't deserve this, but we of course think he does.
Well, I think it's a wonderful award to give to Bernie, who gave so much. His whole entire working career was with real estate group in Minnesota, either at the local level or at the state level. And so it's a great honor for him. Wish he were alive to be receiving the award himself.
He'd be humbled and he'd say, there are others that deserve it much more than I do. Something's wrong here. But then we'd talk to him and I think I'll show up.
Please congratulate Bernie Rice, award recipient of the 2011 Minnesota Real Estate Hall of Fame.